You ask your kid to do their homework, and 5 minutes later, they're in tears, distracted, storming off, yelling. That's not defiance. That's a brain locked out of its control center. And today we're going to be talking about executive functioning and how dysregulated kids can access their control center when they're dysregulated. And of course, how to help them access it so they can be more focused and complete tasks and listen. Years ago, I worked with a mom named Jen, and she had a kid named Owen who could memorize baseball stats, who could jump out of bed for anything related to baseball. But when it came to doing his schoolwork at home, it was like you couldn't offer him $1,000,000. You couldn't offer him anything to get him to do it. And so we looked at his brain map, which you don't need a brain map, but it just gives us such an incredible visual representation to see what's actually going on in his brain. And really, what happened? No surprise. His prefrontal cortex, we're going to talk about that, was offline. And he became incredibly overwhelmed the moment he had to do things that were what we call non preferred tasks, basically things that were hard for him. What is executive functioning? I love to talk about it, and I love to really talk about it differently than everybody else because we're talking about what happens in the brain. We're not talking about study skills. Executive functioning, that's that job manager of the brain. It helps you plan. That's the big differentiator from attention. You need attention for executive functioning, but it's a separate skill. So it helps you plan, organize, prioritize, and it remembers a lot, including working memory. What we need is a job manager. What does a job manager do? It helps you stay on task, it helps you manage your time, control your emotions, even when you're irritated. Some of us can do this well now, some of us can't. It's not about willpower, it's about access to that prefrontal cortex right there in the tippy of your forehead. And really, our frontal lobe is what makes us human, differentiates us from animals. What happens when your kid is dysregulated? And just to know, dysregulation can be overstimulation or could be understimulation. They'll have the same effect in many ways. The behaviors can be different, but in the brain, it can shut down executive functioning in the same way. So we see that when our kids are on our devices too long. We see that when our kids are irritated by something of request. But stress hijacks that frontal lobe. The survival is going to trump any logical thinking. And you're saying, what do you mean survival mode? Well, as soon as you have a stressor, perceived, real, or imagined, your brain says, oh, I've got to survive. And that stress flips the brain into that survival mode and it goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Emotions will flood and shut down any logic. You're just not going to be thinking straight. And that doesn't matter how bright your kid is. This is, you feel this as well. This is adults. You have to think of executive functioning like the file cabinet of the brain. When a child is calm, they can open drawers easily, they can find things, they can grab that memory, they can problem solve, they can really pay attention in a very different way. And for those of us that have multiple kids, you can see where your kids fall on this. And these are skills that can be taught and learned. Sometimes people are incredibly innately weak in this, but please know you can learn how to do it and stay tuned so that you can learn those skills because you're just not hearing this. And it's a shame. And I talk about it and have been talking about it for 20 years. But when you're dysregulated, the cabinet is shut. You cannot access that cabinet. It's like that old cabinet that has the lock that you can't find. No files are coming out of there unless you reset the brain. And that's really important to know that we can reset. So, when you think about like kids with executive functioning difficulties, you can say, well, this kid can solve complex Legos or is really interested in math and amazing at math, but they can't find their shoes when they're anxious. As soon as you start putting in that stress, you're just not going to be as capable with tasks. And you might even see this for our kids that dysregulate and have high emotional flooding a lot. It may even be things that they enjoy. That's when we really need to be incredibly worried about our kids when it starts moving into other areas. We always need to be worried because we want our kids to have these skills. Good self regulation is what leads to happy adults. If you've ever said to yourself, like, well, he knows what to do and he just won't do it, this is your answer. He does know. He just can't reach that file when he's dysregulated. I hope that's an aha moment for you because kids, not that they're never willful, but we assume it a lot more. As soon as you see those signs of dysregulation, you have to start thinking they are offline. Here's the cycle of what happens and why executive functioning goes in the can is that you have some type of failure, executive functioning failure. You're not on time. You didn't start the task right. You're missing directions. And then it goes into frustration. Then it goes into shame. And then it goes into more dysregulation. And then what often happens are parents' stress mirrors their dysregulation, and you move into a term that I have coined called co-dysregulation. The harder you push, the more the brain shuts down. So the harder you push a dysregulated kid, the more the brain is going to shut down. And in fact, the harder you push, the more you're going to get agitated. It's not that your child won't do these things, whatever your request is, being on time, tasks, all these things related to executive functioning. It's that their brain can't at that moment. And I don't want you to think that it will never can, because that is just baloney and shit. So, what really, really helps, and this is so critical that I want you to hear this because it's going to reframe how you are parenting your child, how you are working with your child. And again, executive functioning is a skill that is learned and developed over time. If your child is on that developmental spectrum in the sense of, executive functioning developmental spectrum and they're weak, rest assured, when you consistently do these things, they can gain the skills. I had recently had the privilege of reconnecting with a child that I had worked with 13 years ago. He's like a man. And he was super smart, ridiculously charming. I mean, so charming. I remember him like it was yesterday. Like I could see him right here, me testing him. He didn't have executive functioning skills. Well, guess what? He learned them. And he is doing incredible things. In fact, he's going to come on my show. But it's really exciting to see when you regulate and you teach the skills what can happen. What do we need to start with? Number one, what are people who have good executive functioning skills? How are they so different for people that have poor executive functioning skills? They see the end result before they start a task. That is the definer. Don't let anybody tell you anything else because that really is what happens in the brain. So, boom. And I love to use recipes or shopping, grocery shopping. I'm going to the grocery store. We're going to start with the end in mind. What are we cooking? So, we're cooking pasta fagioli. How about that? Pasta with beans, right? Of course, gluten-free pasta. So what do I need? I see it, I smell it. I'm thinking my mom Philomena made it. God rest her soul in heaven. I know exactly what I need to get, right? I start with that end result. Somebody with poor executive functioning is like, yeah, just go to the store. I'll just, kind of get some stuff. They're not even seeing, they're not working backwards from what does it look like? What are the steps? Then I build my list. They might build that list and not even think about what it looks like. We teach with the end in mind. However, regulation first parenting, you and your child regulate, okay, peeps, is that you can only teach when the nervous system is calm. This is where we're failing our children at school, our children at home. And you're doing a great job. You just don't know better. We know better, we can do better. And that's why you're here. So we regulate first. What is that for you? Is that breathing? Is it movement? Is it sensory grounding before teaching? What is it? We must have a consistent thing that we are doing that gets that nervous system back online, particularly if your kid is coming from device usage. And this device usage can be schoolwork. We want to reset, always doing a couple minutes of breathing. And again, you may say, oh, my kid's older. Tough nookies. This is just the way it works. You do it with them, you model with them, and you really initiate these tasks before you are calm. I mean, before the dysregulation happens, you're going to co regulate, okay? Because your calm signals safety. A parent's steady tone, their good body language is going to reopen that file cabinet for them. And this doesn't happen overnight. Don't make me get out my magic wand. I'm going to get out my magic wand and it's going to make noise on this. But there is nothing that happens overnight. Okay, people, this is the way it works. It's the way the brain works. You're going to then teach one skill at a time, one executive functioning skill at a time. Pick one, like starting a task. Oh, here's this worksheet. What's one thing you need? You're coaching them on starting a task, not finishing it. Task initiation is starting a task. Once the brain's calm, you practice it and store it, it's going to learn the skill and you can move on to the next skill. Especially for kids that have neurodivergent brains, have problems processing, maybe have clinical mental health issues. You're going to be doing this quite a bit. And it may feel frustrating for you, but you can keep doing what you're doing because it's not working. So you might as well switch it to something we know that is scientifically proven, right? We're using what we know about the brain and executive functioning to help your kids learn. One of the big problems with people with executive functioning weaknesses is they're just not problem solving and they don't have what we call those metacognitive skills. They're not thinking about thinking. So people with strong executive functioning skills are thinking all the time. I think all the time is the problem. It's really a superpower for me, but I have to really do things all the time to counter it. As a parent, we want to model thinking out loud. Narrate your own planning. You're going to make the pasta fagioli. Oh, I'm making pasta fagioli. I do this literally all the time. Like, okay, what are we making? What do we need? And my kids do this back. Like it's just the way it is. And you don't have to make it immediately about the homework. You can make it about something that's more neutral, that's not going to destabilize your child or yourself. But we need them to build internal self talk. That's their job. That's the mental manager. And they need this skill. It's so good in so many areas of their lives for safety, for their job, relationships. You have to have a good internal self-talk and also healthy so that you're not beating each other up. And then we really want to create those calm practices. You can build it again during easy things like planning for a game or snacks or organizing Legos or a teenager doing stuff with their friends. We did it for the dance. What do we need? Like, what is it like? And then this gets them out of that locked file cabinet. And then we always want to support our brain's regulation. So there's those tools, like breath work and meditation. But of course, magnesium, you're going to use my magnesium, which has L-threonate, which crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's like a direct injection into the nervous system, scientifically backed for memory and attention and all of these things. And then what we want to do, you can also do things like PEMF, neurofeedback, good sleep, nutrition, critical movement. When Jen learned this with Owen, she taught him things like she was always yelling at him to pack his bag the night before. And she was able to turn that around because after they learned to regulate, they broke this yelling cycle. And it was like, okay, tomorrow you're ready for school. I see you with your bag and you're out the door and you're getting out there in time. And what do we need to do right now to make that happen? Instead of you do this. And then within a few weeks of just practicing and practicing and practicing this, he was remembering on his own. And he really was successful probably 98% of the time. No kid's going to be perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. I model that very much. But we have to shift our mindset and start thinking that regulation is the pathway to learning. It's not the reward for it. We really have to say regulate first, and all of these things can happen. And the more you focus on calm, the faster the EF skills are going to come. Everyone always thinks like, oh, I need a pill for this. I'm in these Facebook groups and everyone says, what's the pill for dysregulation? What's the pill for executive functioning? These are skills, mama and papa and teachers, right? And you absolutely can teach these to your kids without medication. And in fact, if your kid is medicated, guess what? You might be annoyed because you're not understanding these are skills, and you're probably not dealing with a practitioner that teaches you these things, because people tell me this all over the world. Calm first, teach one skill. You're going to always start with the end in mind, because that's what builds executive functioning. If you want to build your child's executive functioning step by step in an easy way, you can download my executive functioning toolkit. It's something I've had for a long time that is amazing. And you go to drroseann.com/EF toolkit, short, actionable, and things that you could start using. I love hearing from educators, because they always will message me and say, why isn't somebody talking about this? Well, here we are. So remember, regulate first, start with the end in mind. You got this, mom and dad.
Want more insights and solutions? Well, subscribe to our Dysregulation Insider, and it will show up in your inbox every week.